which I don't mind those games either, but it takes a lot longer to feel good about yourself, so. Well, I don't know about that. For me, if I can put, like, this game is a little bit too much progression. After less than 5 hours of just grinding it out, you already feel like you can beat the game, and you can. Like, I'm already well past the point where if I just played through the game, I'd beat the game. Easy. So this is not a good example of a game with good progression. Yeah, but most of the ROM hacks and whatnot are not what I'm interested in, because they make the grind worthless. Like, people keep telling me to play 1.3 because it's harder, but I care about story and atmosphere, and I like the grind. So I need those three things in an RPG. The grind needs to feel like it's not a waste of time, because in the Elder Scrolls series, it's a good example of where a grind is a waste of time. Especially Oblivion, which is my favorite. My favorite Elder Scrolls is the worst for me, which is funny because I love it story-wise, atmosphere, and I'm one of the few people who does think that about Oblivion compared to like Skyrim and Morrowind, mostly Morrowind. But I haven't finished Morrowind, so I can't weigh in on Morrowind. I need to finish Morrowind, and I plan on doing it on cast at some point. Anyway, Oblivion's a good example of when you grind up, suddenly everything's the same level as you, and it doesn't matter. Your grind meant nothing because you're still doing the exact same thing you did at level 1, just now you're level 20. I hate that. That's not progression. That's the type of progression I am kind of referring to. When I mean progression that doesn't feel like progression. Skyrim is guilty of it too, albeit slower. And then once you hit the big curve at the end, everything becomes easy mode. Of course, last time I played Skyrim, I modded it to make the end of the game harder, but it still wasn't much harder. But the Fallout series is also guilty of that. Almost all of those games are guilty of that problem, the Bethesda games. Where it starts off hard, which difficulty curve is nice, but then it sort of plateaus within 2 levels and it's done. I don't like that. But I mean, I'm also the type of person who will play a game on normal instead of hard, or epic, or legendary, or whatever the hardest difficulty setting is. Because for me, I just want a story. What is a keyword? That's why any games that really stick with me can, but it depends on how you played through the game and if you choose or not to use certain characters. But I don't care about difficulty, as I just said. So Like, Valius is a good example of a boss with a steep curve where, unless you were progressing ahead of time, he was going to give you a challenge. Because of the room setup, the demons, etc. He was the one boss in the entire game that had that. But by the time you get to Bethel Garrison, unless you choose not to use Excalibur, the game is easy. It doesn't matter who uses Excalibur. Yeah, most of it has to do with Bethel Garrison though. You get the strongest class, who's only balanced by his normal speed, and the strongest weapon at Bethel Garrison. So, because I found that entire castle that Valius is in, except for the first fight, pretty difficult. I've done challenges, but I can't play the game without grinding. I don't like it that way. So, a challenge means nothing to me. Because I like the randomized fights more than the story fights after playing it so many times. And it's like that for any game that any RPG I like to just sort of roll through it, because then I can feel the story better. I don't want to be fucking frustrated, because then I will miss something in the story. I'm guaranteed to. And then it reflects on how I feel about the game later. Which isn't fair to the game, because the game did nothing wrong. The game was the game, so... but that's just me. I mean, most people like a moderate difficulty. I'm also firm in the belief that normal difficulty is best difficulty, because 9 times, even more than 9 times out of 10, somewhere around like 97% of the time, those difficulties higher than normal, where the game was actually designed and balanced around, aren't really designed any different. They're just, numbers are changed. Nothing else has really changed, and they can't because they don't have time or a budget to do so. So but I mean, because they aren't, they're not necessarily better because they're harder, nor are they truly harder. They're harder artificially. Mathematically. Frustration doesn't mean a better game either. It's something else I hate about. Damn, I was hoping that worked. Oh well. Maybe it'll work now. No. Guess I just went too far with that one. But work with Time Mage. Exactly. Like, some frustration is okay, but not to the point where you're like, yeah, this is truly bullshit. This shouldn't be this way. Like, the Halo Legendary difficulties is a good example of difficulty done really, really quickly and unfairly. Because essentially all they do is make it to where enemies like one-shot you. And that's not fair. It's definitely challenging to do it, but it's not challenging in that you're learning how to do it just to do it. Now you're learning how to do it without taking any damage, without making any room for error, which is not good design. Yeah, the Elder Scrolls is like that too, but it's in an even dumber way, where it's just literally 25% damage, 50% damage, 100%, all, like from normal up to legendary. It just goes down from 100 all the way down to 25. I have a ROM hack, but I don't know if it's 1.3. I think it's 1.3. And if it is, I have touched it a little bit, but I haven't really gotten into it. There are a few things I like about the one I have. But overall, it's not something I really want to get into. I'd rather just work down my list of games. They aren't technically just win here either, unless you unbalance yourself to do so. They can be. The biggest thing that is a problem with this game is the calculator. Haste, which is a problem in almost every RPG. You can't change that. Haste unbalances anything that can be slightly overpowered. And Excalibur, which is perma-haste. Perma-haste is always bad. Haste should always run out. And I know the ROM hack I have, Excalibur's haste is temporary. It's just a normal haste. You start with haste rather than it stays until your sword is broken or stolen, which makes more sense. And I like that, because Excalibur shouldn't be, oh, I have Excalibur, I win. Yeah? I don't think it should be like that. It is, and I'm gonna use it. It shouldn't be. But I understand why they did it, too. I mean... Tactics Advance isn't the same game, though. Tactic Advance is essentially a spiritual sequel from what I've seen. War of the Lions is the remake. I disagree because for the sake of argument, you're supposed to feel powerful at the end of the game. Now, I don't think everybody should be one-shotting everything. But I think a class that's balanced to be slower, maybe move less, because it's bulky, weighed down by armor, like the Samurai. The Samurai would be a class I'd expect to one-shot things, because it's a two-handed sword class. If it can get into range to smack you with its katana, that's a class I'd expect to be able to kill you in one hit at the end of the game. A thief, on the other hand, should never kill anything at the end of the game in one hit. But that is traded off with high speed and mobility. But that's me thinking out loud at that point. Like, that's kind of how I see it. But coming from MMOs and such, especially WoW, except WoW's gotten really bad about the whole trade-off system. It doesn't really work anymore. WoW used to be, anyway. That's really a different philosophy that I don't share. Because there should always be something you should be able to one-shot. Like, in this game, I'd expect to be able to one-shot ghouls, the blue-caped skeletons, the brown panthers, anything you see at the beginning of the game. Chocobos because they're squishy, mages. But again, MMO mindset. When I started MMOs, a beefy warrior who could get in and attack an archer or a mage would kill you in one hits, if not two. Period. That's how it worked. Especially Two Moons. Two Moons was fun. But I mean, that comes from a lot of like Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm WoW experience when it was starting to change to everybody has mobility now. In Wrath of the Lich King, if a warrior could get to a mage without it being able to blink away, the mage died. Kinda. They're really beefy though. in comparison to most other enemies. Now that doesn't mean anything by the time you get to Bethel Garrison, but I mean they aren't dying immediately. They tend to die slower, but not much slower, sadly. Yeah, but they trade their health bar of 1 hit for mobility. That's what they get, mobility in trade for health. So they have the ability to get away, but that's why the warrior is so powerful. Because if they can't get to said mage or archer, then they shouldn't be allowed to. Because if they can get to said enemies that are able to move away so quickly, they should be allowed to kill them instantly. And again, and same for the mages. If they're allowed to stay put to be able to pull off a spell, they should be able to 1 or 2 shot the warrior who is wearing plate armor. So they are pretty tanky. They've got defenses set up, but the mage is a glass cannon. It's not like a rogue. A rogue I'd expect to take a lot longer, no matter what point in the game they're at, because they're a rogue. They have a high mobility, they've got decent health, but not something to call good, I guess. But they've got more escapes and CC than anybody else, so they're able to hold enemies down to do what they do. It's but that's my methodology for it. And I kind of carry that over to anything. It's like, if you're able to carry a 2-handed weapon on the battlefield without taking an arrow to the face, or some part you're vulnerable in because you're wearing full plate armor, then chances are you're going to behead someone. Kind of how it worked in real life. If you were able to get up to the spear line without dying to the spears or the archers, you're gonna take somebody with you. Same concept. But I mean, that's just methodologies for the end of the game. Which really only matters for a few hours when we're talking most people. People who aren't me. Or people like me who spend hours and hours and hours pushing their characters to the end of the game now. For most people, they won't see that until the last few fights. If they see it then. So, the philosophy behind it isn't really necessary. Fun to think about though. And you hit him twice. Yes. Uh, but I mean, lots of people love challenge. Most. Oh, definitely. And the great classic games tend to get as close to that as they can when you look at them in depth. That's why they're classics, is because everybody can take a piece of it they enjoy and then finish it and really be moved by it. Oh, definitely. I mean, if you didn't have your own opinion, you wouldn't be your own person. I mean, it's good to learn from other people. It's never good to just agree. You want to formulate your own opinion. I'm just over opinionated, so. And I really enjoy like talking about opinions because it lets me think about my own more than I already do. My best friend tends to be my biggest inspiration for changing parts of my opinion that I never think about because we have. Oh yeah, well that's the only way you're going to improve upon your own opinion. Or even consider things you might not consider before. If you're just closed-minded about it, you'll never change. So, there's the human condition. That's why I love talking about my opinions. They're usually gamer related because I'm a shut-in. And I don't really spend much time thinking about anything outside of games or my family, etc. Oh, definitely. There are so many things I never thought I'd enjoy, and I do. And there are some things I'm still pretty close-minded about.